It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
This is Earl Benson, reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Foul Territory, Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
And welcome, everybody, to our weekly wrap-up on our daily gun show. Where we go live on Friday evenings or late nights, depending on where you are in the country. And we talk about what happened this week in the 2A. A little puppy co-host just came up here and got himself settled. He's been in there harassing the other dog for the last hour or so. And he's tired himself out, so he's going to probably sleep here for the show. All right, we'll dig into our Substack. Here we go. And let's see. I should probably just, I've been thinking about just recording the beginning of the show. I kind of think it's lame to have pre-recorded intros, but they are pretty effective or efficient, maybe. But you know what? This is done live. This show, at least, is done live on Tuesday, Friday nights, so that we can experience that interactive nature of the internet. Maybe that's going away. It used to be a bigger thing than it is today, maybe. But we'll stick around, see if it comes back again. But that being the case, I kind of fumble through the intro of the show each week, so appreciate everybody sticks with me for that. But the goal of this show is to wrap up the week for Second Amendment. And I put a line in the sand between Second Amendment and guns. So the way we roll out, or the way we format the show, I guess, is to talk about the 2A stuff. Then we talk about the videos and projects that are happening that are focused on our Second Amendment protects. Then we get into the gun stuff. And after some gun stuff, we'll talk about some radio shows. We'll talk about some history, some calendar stuff. And then we can talk about some military interviews that happen. And then at the end of the show, we talk about the stuff we've been up to. And scrolling through all this, kind of a preview for people that are joining us live. If you're listening to us in the future as a podcast, though, we appreciate it. I've kind of getting used to uploading to the Podbean, which is where we are consolidated all our shows. So while we are still trying to talk and click at the same time, and I'm having trouble finding my Podbean. What is it? There it is. So we can show it over here on the people that are joining us live. We still are on iTunes and iHeartRadio and Amazon and Google and all the different podcast platforms that people might be listening on. But it all gets accumulated here on, or gets distributed from, I guess, Podbean, and that's new. I used to send these all out, not by hand. I just had them all set up to run separately, like it's all coming from the same place. Well, now they're all coming from the same place, but that place is Podbean and not our own server. And essentially that gives us an opportunity to rank with other podcasts more easily. It's real easy when Podbean is already hosting a bunch of podcasts for them to rank us. So it's been super interesting. If anybody's interested in seeing what it's like to see a podcast grow, see what it's like behind the scenes, let me know. That's what kind of stuff we do on Tuesdays. But anyway, it's been fun to watch the numbers grow. So thanks to the people that join us, either on Podbean specifically, or iTunes or iHeartRadio or Google or wherever it is, Amazon Prime, I guess, wherever it is you might listen to your podcast. And especially appreciate the people that leave us feedback, because that's how the platforms know who to recommend and that kind of thing. All right, that being said, since we're welcoming people and thanking people, I'm also going to thank our Patreons. We don't have a lot of ads here. I'm not sponsored by anybody in the industry yet. If you want to sponsor us, let me know. But I'm not beholden to any brand or any company or anything like that. So I appreciate the Patreons, people that have made it possible for us to work on things that aren't necessarily fancy or mainstream or obvious money makers. We've worked on projects over the years that are much more interesting and hopefully more useful. So this project, along with the others, are all funded by our Patreons, people that subscribe to what we do. Those people are doing that mostly on Patreon. Some people are using YouTube membership to do that. And then a couple of people just go straight through PayPal. And however it is you want to subscribe to what we do, some people think of it as like you having a magazine subscription or some content subscription. But for us, we think of it as paying for the 3 servers, which are not that expensive, but they cost something each month. There's 3 of them. And then we have some software. And I always like to experiment with new software. I'm paying for AI again. It's been an experience. Again, if anybody's a Patreon and would like to have some experience or some insight as to what it's like working with paid AI instead of just the free versions, let me know. I was paying for a long time and then started paying again thanks to the Patreons. We just had a little burst in Patreon support, so I appreciate that. It went up about $20 and it brought us up. That's a bill, $20 a month. That's a bill. That's a new piece of software we can use. When we're talking about software, it's typically analytics software that we use to help evaluate friends and projects out there working on 2A. The same way that a website consultant would. That's what we do, right? So it's just, the kind of analytic tools that an electrician would use to make sure your electricity is in the right phase. We're going to use tools to make sure your websites or your social projects are effective. And those are the kind of tools we're talking about subscribing to. So thanks to the Patreons that make it possible. And then, of course, the other thing is the time. I'm just getting flush. I'm not quite there yet, but I've spent a lot of my time over the last year paying off bills that I've accumulated. So the Patreons are making it possible for me to take time away from that effort to talk about 2A. And I do this, it's my passion, but honestly, I was almost lost the house, so I didn't have an opportunity to spend as much time as I'd like. And the Patreons are definitely making it possible for us to spend time on these projects. That being said, like I said, we don't have corporate sponsorship. If you're a gun shop or something, or if you're a manufacturer or something and you'd like to support us, just get on Patreon and let us know. We appreciate people that we've had gun shops support us over the years and other people in the industry. And you can talk with us directly or just get on board with Patreon. It allows us to distribute posts and updates and things like that really efficiently. All right, and then I'm going to also say there's a lot of people on Patreon. Let me take a second here, since nobody's really saying anything live. I'll just take a second here to talk about Patreon. There's a bunch of people that hate Patreon. There's people that loathe it, and I don't care. I'm not here to fight with them about it. They can hate anything they want. But Patreon's freaking awesome. Patreon's a massive platform. It's a social platform, and the people that go to Patreon with wallets are different than the people that go to YouTube with eyeballs and time to kill. They're different. The people that go to Patreon with wallets are different than the people that go to Instagram with eyeballs and time to kill. And they're different than the people that go to, fill in the blank with time to kill. People that go to Patreon are typically investors, people that want to see change in the world, and they understand as capitalists that support, financial support, is what makes that happen. I'm going to use my example, one of my personal examples. I'm a big fan of mushrooms. I went to school for mushrooms. I think mushrooms are cool. They're a lot of protein. They're easy to grow. And there's so many varieties of them. There's just a lot of things you can do with mushrooms. And it's one of those things that almost anybody could grow mushrooms. We could really sustain a lot of people with mushrooms, supplements and that kind of thing. So And then now that there's all these mushrooms that are supposed to help you with your brain power and stuff, like there's just a lot of stuff going on. Mushrooms are a huge chunk of our planet, really. We just don't get a lot of attention because over the years, people haven't given a lot of attention. So that's changing. Like I said, I went to school for it, so I have a little bit more focus on it than most people, I suppose. And so on the Patreon and on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter over the years when we've been doing projects, I look out, I just type in mushroom and see what's out there. And I'll find people chopping up wood, let's say, and drilling holes in it and impregnating that with the spores and then selling those log chunks. And then people in the right climate can just throw those out in the yard, essentially water them, and a little while later you have mushrooms growing. So things like that, projects that get people like more familiar with normalized mushrooms, right? Like normalize the idea of being able to pull protein out of your backyard as it decomposes your normal lawn trash, or food waste or whatever it might be, or maybe help your lawn waste, just get way more beneficial for gardening or whatever. So there's lots of ways that mushrooms can be useful, and they're super cheap and just kind of happen. Mushrooms just sort of happen. Anyway, I'll support these different projects. I've seen some food trucks and stuff that were like mushroom based and that kind of thing. And it's just fun as a capitalist to micro invest, is that what it's called? You throw $5, $10, $50, whatever you're comfortable with, at these projects. And there's podcasts that I subscribe to. I think right now we're subscribed to something like 30. It might be up to 36 projects on Patreon. So right away, and I only subscribe for $1. We're not high rollers here. But I support something like 36 projects with our channel. So like the first 36 people that subscribe on Patreon, like that's going right back into other channels. And a couple of them we subscribe at like the $5 level. And that changes. We don't just blindly support people, but we do support the projects that are out there supporting the community. So anyway, we really appreciate those Patreons. I think it's a valuable platform, and I recommend, I've always done this, take $100 if you can afford it. Take $20 if you can afford it. Take whatever you can comfortably afford to subscribe to in a month and chop that up. Give us $5, give us $2, whatever it is. And then take the rest of it and look around on Patreon and find people that are doing something that you value and subscribe. Give yourself, I don't know, however long it's comfortable for you. 5 months at $20 a month, that'll be $100. Find out in 5 months if it was worth that $100, and then come back and let me know. And I've never had anybody come back and say, you know what, I spent $100 on Patreon and it was worthless. I didn't find any enjoyment in watching 5 months worth of someone understanding that people out there support them enough to throw another $5 in their pile. Now you're going to find people that are unappreciative, people that don't give a crap about the financial support, but that's not the norm on Patreon. Most people on Patreon super appreciate, they understand that, $3, $5 increments, $3 memberships allow them to really get some work done. All right, so with that, I see Black Rifle saying hey, so I'll start the show. Just kind of ranting here about Patreon. It's been a while since I've done I appreciate the Patreons and why. Again, I'm a Patreon. I support we support 30 projects out there. And it's not just, I don't like to just say Patreon each week as if it's just some part of the program or part of the project that, is just there. It's there for a reason. There's lots of other platforms out there that are valid, and even channel membership on YouTube to some extent. I just find the Patreon much more focused on entrepreneurial support than YouTube membership. YouTube membership is a lot more like subscribing to a TV show you like, which is nice, but it's more of an audience relationship than a participatory member of the project, and that's really what our Patreons are. I hope they feel like they're members of the projects. I'll often put out polls and stuff to make sure they're, what they're most interested in. If I've got time and I'm going to, spend some time on stuff, I'll tell them, hey, here's 6 things I'm thinking about. What do you want to see us spend time on? All right, that being said, on Fridays, we get together live, and again, because of the interactive nature of the internet, I hope people don't think of this as a thing to watch, instead something to participate in. I've been going live since Thursday, whatever it was, in 2010. well, no, it was 2009. Some Thursday in September of 2009, I believe, was the first time YouTube turned the live button on, and I went live that evening, and we've been live almost every single night since then. So this is just what it's like in 2024. I'm used to when I like it more when there's been times, eras of live where there's been quite a bit of conversation out there. So I don't know why it's weird to have dozens of people show up and nobody say anything. I guess people just think that's cool now. But feel free to make comments and be part of the show. All right. So with that, on Fridays we go live so that we can focus on what happened this week. So let's get into it. I usually put this show together throughout the week, so some of it I'll remember and some of it was from earlier in the week and I might not remember. But our goal is to not just go live here, but to take the information that we're going to be kind of showing on the screen here, which is on Substack, which is essentially a blog, and to take that information, that text, that data, and to put it on multiple places online. So we'll have it on a couple of blogs, we'll have it on quite a few social platforms, and then of course it goes out to the podcast as a description in the podcast, so we get it on as many platforms as possible. And as you see as we go through here, we're going to be chatting up, we're going to be helping out, we're going to be promoting as much as possible valid projects and people that are normalizing guns, that are solving the equations that we have instead of just making money off the situations that we've got out there. All right, so we put this on Substack, so that's one of the places we'll put it. We also put it on Patreon. I just spent some time talking about that. We have a newsletter. If we ever get super rich or have a bunch of Patreons, I'll probably start doing the newsletter more often. It just takes so much time. I have to figure out an easier newsletter or something. But Substack, and then we have the Instagram, and then of course we talked about the podcast. So those are the places that we try to send the information out each week, and of course the places you can find us. We appreciate the thumbs or the likes or whatever to help the mechanisms recommend us, right? That's the whole point of interaction out there. All right, so we'll get into the news of the week first. Most of that comes from the NSSF. In fact, all of it came from NSSF this week. Then we'll get into the 2A talk, the stuff that's specifically about what our Second Amendment protects. Then we get into the gun talk, like I mentioned, and then those other segments. So this is by no means everything, but I'm using the NSSF email that comes out on Fridays that anyone could subscribe to, their industry email. Is the best summary I've found for 2A news. However, I sum it up quite a bit and I leave a lot of it out. Of course, there's a lot of news that happens that's frustrating, the little tiny things that we should be aware of, or at least should have on our radar, yet understand that they're blips and they're not storm warnings, and at the same time understand when there's a storm warning, know how to get the word out to get as many people on deck as possible, right? So it's a challenge. We're always going to have that, but one way we can mitigate the need for dealing with that challenge would be to remove the need for that challenge, right? Or remove that challenge, and I think that's done through awareness and understanding. Once people understand that guns aren't magically evil, magically violent, magically deadly, or magically like a negligent nuisance whenever they need to be for the narrative. Once people figure out that guns are just like cars, and most 99% of people plus are using them responsibly and reasonably without any laws worrying about it. Once we get to that point, then all this becomes nothing. People will never be able to be manipulated again once we normalize guns, right? So with that being said, let's talk about the news of the week. And if I'm missing something, there are some things like there's actually some things on Substack that are pretty good. They just don't come out regularly enough for me to include here. But I do include some other resources in this section of the show each week when I can find them. Okay, so NSSF launches gun storage check week. So I guess whatever, having annual reminders to do stuff is probably a good idea. One we're allowed to have a gun, in a toolbox or in a fishing shed or, I don't know, a hunting cabin or something. Like, we're allowed to have guns that aren't necessarily right next to us. We're allowed to understand that just like a knife or some gasoline, we shouldn't be held responsible for every piece of property that we own on our own property, because someone might come along and be bad with it. Because then again, every piece of ladder or every hammer, every piece of heavy tool we have, every open staircase, we should have a gate on it. At some point we can't make the world Nerf. So, I'm not going to get behind too much of this stuff, but at the same time, you want to check your smoke alarm batteries once a year, change them out. You want to take your desiccants out of the safe and throw them in the oven, once every, depends on where you live, I suppose, but, once every year for us, maybe every 3 months, depending on where you live. And you set that on some kind of schedule, right the week after somebody's birthday, that's when you change out the lights in your optics, or the batteries in your optics or something. So if they want to make a week for gun storage check, I get it. That makes sense, I guess. Maybe changing out the batteries in your, what do they call them, bio something safes. And it's a proactive measure. It's something that we do to, encourage and remind ourselves, give ourselves a mechanism or a motivation to do these preventive maintenance type of things. Next up is firearms industry surpasses $17 billion in Pittman Robertson excise tax contributions. So 10%? Some percent of, is it 11%? Some percent of every gun sold and some percent of all ammunition sold goes into a federal pile, and then that's allocated to essentially wildlife management and resource management, I guess. We could have a whole giant show about whether or not the federal government manages our wildlife and our wildlife habitats well or correctly. And then again, you can have a giant debate on whether or not is the case compared to who? Compared to Canada, who doesn't even have any old growth forest left, or compared to Europe that has nothing left, or as far as natural resources, or compared to Amazon or something. So, when we're talking about this, it's interesting that the industry surpasses 17 billion. Is that in all time? And then I wish we had someone in the community to give us some relationship. What's 17 billion? Because again, I'm pretty sure they're talking about that over all time. That doesn't seem that big compared to the oil industry in 1 year. How much is that compared to Ford Ranger trucks or something, or Ford S10? I guess it's a Chevy S10 truck or something. Because it just doesn't sound like that much money. I guess it does, but you know what I mean? Over the price of all these years, or all the guns sold, 17 billion just doesn't sound like that much. And if that's buying habitat, or how much do you think? What do we do that has to do with habitat that costs nothing? Everything costs money with that. Colorado HB 1294, ban on semi-automatic rifles, was defeated, and there were 10 total anti-gun bills in Colorado. And I'm already 25 minutes into the show, so I might as well take a second to brag on it. But we're going to talk about it at the end of the show. I went through and looked at the money again, and there's more money being spent in the state of Colorado than there is at all of our national level organizations, except for NSSF and the NRA. So NRA makes $200 million, way more than anybody else. So here and there, that's the case. NSSF, something like, I forget off the top of my head, but maybe 15 million. The next biggest organization is an organization in Colorado nobody talks about. They made more money than GOA. They made more money than Second Amendment Foundation. And we still had 10 anti-gun bills happen in Colorado. I'm just saying. Let's not be oblivious to what's going on in the world. So, Colorado, did they dodge a bullet? Or are they having their fucking chain yanked? But what do I know? I don't live in Colorado. Maine's waiting period law threatens to drive business south. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's a couple of giant gun shops in Maine that are leaving the state to go to, what's south of Maine? New Hampshire or Connecticut? You couldn't go to Connecticut, but whatever. They're leaving Maine because of the waiting period that they just passed. Let's see. Then we have, and that's a state that was minding their business and actually, they have a lot of people, from what I understand, moving from Massachusetts. So it's like a California people moving to Arizona, or California people moving to Colorado, or California people moving to Texas, or California people moving to Nevada, or California people moving to Oregon. Sorry. They kind of ruin everything. At least the people that move do, when they drag their shitty laws with them. So sort of what's happening sounds like what's happening in Maine. A bunch of Massachusetts people voting Massachusetts-ish laws up there in reaction to, did anything even happen in Maine, or was it about to happen in Maine? It got thwarted, but it definitely made news. So on cue, they react, and NSSF is making a point to let us know that the industry is moving because of it. It's probably a big deal in Maine. I can't imagine they have a lot of big businesses up there, right? And we have 2 gun control. I posted this one in Gizzard's chat later or earlier. 2 gun control proposals were defeated in the Pennsylvania House. One of them was all federal firearms licenses, and we're going to need to report electronically to the state. So in other words, FFLs, instead of having to just do their regular 4473, the state would have added a layer. There's like 9 states that add a layer to the 4473 to make it more of a nuisance or more of a burden to the person buying. And Pennsylvania was trying to add that. And then there was one to ban bump stocks. So both of those were defeated. At least they were not passed through their house. Agarites are saying, falling asleep. I hear that. I do this show late. I'll take a second and mention that for people that might be new. There's like dozens of people watching the show in the middle of the night. They just don't say nothing. It's weird. So I don't know who these people are. Hopefully it's people driving or people doing shift work or something, and tap on your keyboard or something. I'll know that there's somebody out there. But we do the show in the middle of the night because I've done night work for a long time. Not my entire life, but I've never been afraid to work night shift. I've always enjoyed it for lots of jobs over my whole lifespan. So I'm definitely familiar with this kind of stuff that happens in the middle of the night. And I'm not going to say all my friends are night owls or people that work in the middle of the night, but they seem like it sometimes, at least most of them. So I figure if I'm going to do this show, I'm in Arizona. So if I do this show now, which is essentially 9 o'clock for us, it's not even that late. But, if we do the show at 9 p.m. Instead of sometime during the day for the regular people wanting to do it at prime time, it's way cooler. I don't have to have an air conditioner going. I can just open the door, and it's nice out for the most part. It'll get a little hotter here during the rest of the year. But, and then there's a bunch of people that are up in the middle of the night. So I know that a bunch of people that listen are going to fall asleep. And if you're listening in the podcast, then you don't even know or care what time of day I broadcast this thing. But feel free to leave some feedback. Leave a comment out there or comment over on the YouTube with when you listen. And, we can do a shout out or something. Anyway, so then we have the last one is lawsuits against Smith & Wesson were dismissed. And I think I was like, I'm going to only put that in there because I'll remember. And now I can't remember what the rest of that story was. Oh, man, what was that one? Nope, I can't remember it all. I know as I was typing it, or copying and pasting it, really, I was thinking, maybe I should put more detail in there. And then I'm like, no, I'll remember. Then I watched about 3/4 of Gizzards' show, and I ranted here for half an hour, so don't remember that one. But the goal here is just put some bullet points in, mention some things. Of course, this is all going into, like I mentioned, lots of different places, so it's possible for people to go back and pull from the keywords. Essentially when these things happened in time. It's not like we're often in libraries worth of research archives or anything. We're just creating an indexable set of data that's focused on this, just to add to the general mix. maybe if nothing else, we're adding to the data that the, what do you call them things, the AIs will use in the future. All right, let's get into the Second Amendment stuff that happened this week. I think before we do, I'm going to drink some water. We'll take a second to throw another commercial up here. Our friend Foss, as a maker of spots, here's one for our store.
Sorry to bother you, Ripley, but do you happen to know where I might find help designing a logo?
That's easy. Just head over to gearwebsites.com and they can help you out. While you're there, why not check out all the wonderful 2A-related items for sale? Jimmy, put that down.
People have asked, and that is a fake face. What do they call them things? The face grabbers. That is a fake one at the end. They didn't actually sacrifice an astronaut to an alien creature. Gunmetal guys out there, welcome. I'm suspecting somebody who's actually working right now. Thanks for joining in. All right, so first thing we'll talk about is what I would suggest is probably the most 2A effort that's being done, the most Second Amendment effort that's being done. As we know, the whole situation is there's people that use guns poorly, and there's people, a lot more people, that just own guns because we understand that guns are things just like any other thing, and we own them. But there's a bunch of people also that are scared, and they just don't pay attention. They don't care, and the information that they're given is often in statistics or numbers, and in order to scare or to exploit or to exaggerate or whatever the words you want to use, in order to manipulate, the antis will suggest that the guns are the number one cause of death for children, for example, and the only way that they can use that number is when they include suicides and they include 19-year-olds. So we who have to take the abuse of the negative side of those either intentional or unintentional mistakes that they make, since we are the ones who are the brunt of that, we have to deal with the consequences of it. We have to pay attention to this stuff. So we know that 2 out of every 3 deaths, 60% of deaths, sometimes it goes up to 66% of deaths with a gun are from suicide. And further, we know that the people who choose to use firearm for suicide are often military or police or EMS. People are familiar with and understand how to use a firearm. So those deaths are used against the gun owners. And the worst part is, I mean, it's bad enough, but the worst part is that all the time and effort that and concern and goodwill that the antis create could be going to help those people, but instead it gets pushed towards just the gun. Just the gun is an important thing we got to get rid of. Just the right to that gun is the part that they're worried about. And we can come up with all kinds of other reasons why it's annoying, but in reality, if they really want to help people, and if we really want to help people and get rid of these numbers, then awareness of mental health and prevention of suicide is critical. It's really the only thing there is. I mean, it doesn't matter how you think about this analytically or strategically. There's nothing else that will be as effective in ending this whole debate by taking away a majority of the numbers is by addressing the issues, the underlying causes of what causes people to get to that point. And there's lots of people that'll suggest, because they're getting paid to, that it's just the gun. If they didn't have access to a gun, it would just disappear. We understand that that's not the case, and one of the reasons we know that is because Brooke Cheney from a Great Start Shooting School has done a project every Saturday for years now with a brief focus on mental health awareness and suicide prevention. It allows people like me and others to understand the concept and to talk about it and be more familiar with the terminology and the words and be comfortable talking about this. Unfortunately, she and others who bring up the word suicide prevention get tagged by the analytical mechanics, or whatever you want to call it, the logarithms, the mechanisms, the way that these search engines and the way that the social medias work. They tag some words as positive and some words as negative, and they don't understand connotation. They don't understand subject matter. So when they see suicide, they put that in a bad word category, and her channel, her efforts are stifled. So if you want to do one little thing that can help the most, I'd challenge you. I don't know what you can do once or consistently that would be more effective than helping Brooke's message. There's two national level organizations, one that makes a bunch of money and one that just sits around, that kind of focus on this. And then we have a whole bunch of military and law enforcement kind of centric options, and some clearinghouses, some indexes. But Brooke's effort is consistent, it's legitimate, it's real, and it's authentic, and it's the first thing on our list every week. Can't say enough good stuff about it. I would spend more time on it, but I suspect people think I spend too much time on it already. Colorado, mentioned we did some research on how much the national and, well, pretty much all the national gun owners' rights groups, that's quote unquote gun owners' rights groups at the national level, how much money they make each year. In Colorado, the state level organization in Colorado made more money than the national level organizations known as the Gun Owners of America. So there's an organization in Colorado that made more than Gun Owners of America repetitively year after year, sometimes almost twice as much as them. And then they made more than Second Amendment Foundation every single year. And here's Colorado dealing with assault weapons bans eminently and 9 other efforts. And here's somebody who isn't getting paid $15+ million a year, who's Dragon Man's daughter, Militia.
Hey, Melissa here. I am at Dragon Man's. Normally I make this video in our firearms store. However, today we are open and it has been very busy up front. So I am making this video in the military museum that we give tours in. You notice the background behind me, a little bit different. And we have one of the largest privately owned military museums in the country. So come on out if you have not seen it yet. We give tours.
She's so humble or modest, I don't know, but to suggest they have one of the largest military museums, well, number one, they have the largest privately accessible military museum, period, that's ever happened in all time. And we live in the era of Dragon Man. So Dragon Man could be doing a billion other things instead of having Melissa go and testify all the time and do these updates on their channel. Trust me, these kind of updates, unless you say the sky's falling, these kind of updates do not help your channel as far as numbers and analytics and shit. So these are some of the best, most authentic updates you'll see from Colorado. There's others for sure, but these are the authentic ones. Let's see. This one was from GOA.
Your comments matter, and not just the comments underneath.
I don't want to keep going all night, but it'd be awesome. Back in the day, we would have discussions. Other people would host chats, and those chats would be panels, and we would talk about actual 2A stuff, like actual Second Amendment stuff, and not grip angles and, you know, what kind of red dot somebody was getting paid to talk about. And in those kind of conversations, we would play chunks of this 11-minute, production, I guess, by Gun Owners of America. And they are at least doing something. They're at least doing something. How they're getting it across, I wish we had 6 people trying to get the information across so it could get across 6 times as much. But, you know, they're doing something at least. Then we have the lawyers in Texas, armed attorneys. And this is, I'm going to start winging through them here. This one is with the Texas Suppressor. situation. Will that kill the NFA? Well, it certainly won't kill the NFA if all we're going to do is sit around making lawsuits, right? So it'd be awesome if we had somebody coordinating some actual awareness and effort towards movement in more than just lawsuits and reactive shit. And then we have the attorney generals getting pissed about the new definitions that are impossible to enforce. So, will the NFA be taken away? Could be. We've been sitting at an edge of there that's been setting up on a fence. We could have easily knocked it off already. And then the ATF completely? I don't know. I mean, what if there was a campaign to talk about let me see if I remember the numbers. 400,000 people that die from alcohol and the 100,000 people that die from tobacco. And then they're going to complain about the 40,000 people that die from guns. We just talked about how 30,000 of those 40,000-ish are suicides. And what's the ATF going to do about suicides? Right? What's the ATF closing down gun shops going to do about suicides when most of the suicides are military or law enforcement choosing that option because they're taking away their other options for disease of the or mental issues. So could this happen? Could the ATF be taken down? I don't know. But here's somebody who's talking about it a little bit this week. And this is 4 boxes talking about why they actually want us aren't disarmed. He's essentially talking about Israel and the way that the president or the executive branch is like yanking on small arms aid, or is it more than that? I'm not keeping up that hard. But yanking on military aid, what's the word? Like, depending on if they're dancing the way that the executive branch wants them to dance. That's frustrating as hell. That's the executive branch, and you give them consequences. You vote them in or out of office based on their behavior, right? Based on the things that they do. I don't understand the international stuff that's happening now for sure. I've heard some people try to take gun owners to task, and this happens every election cycle. Not every election year, every election cycle, right? So there are people that will take gun owners to task if we're one-issue voters, but we can't all be multi-issue voters. Otherwise, we would be wailed on. We have to have some people who are paying attention really hard to some issues, and so I'm one of those people. I don't care hardly at all about most of the issues. So you could drive a bus in through the gaps that I have on other issues. I don't really care. But the whole using the way that they're behaving with Israel and the whole conflict over there right now, the current conflict over there right now, and how that indicates how they would act to us, given if they had the ability to take away guns or use guns as a carrot. It's interesting. That's his point, I think. This is horrible. I wish I could play chunks of this because it would copyright me, so I can't. But it's really bad. I think it's from like the 1990s, maybe. So the next thing we're coming up on is a thing I found. I think YouTube just suggested this to me, and it might have suggested to me on the other computer. But I seen it and I was intrigued, so I clicked on it, and it goes MSNBC. And I don't know what that is, the TV show, investigates the 50 caliber militia. And then it just shows a bunch of, it's an hour? That's 39 minutes long. And it just essentially shows a crap ton of stolen little clips from 50 BMG stuff. But a lot of it is from like VHS tapes. So I'm wondering if somebody actually had some old cool VHS tapes, or if those are available online somewhere that you can just grab chunks of. But anyway, they took all these like weird clips from like essentially what YouTube videos used to be back when there was just VHS tapes, and it's like listening to a bunch of politicians get worried about 50 BMGs. All the typical stereotype fears and misconceptions and lies and just dumb things. So it's 39 minutes of that, and I don't know, just put it in there. It's kind of interesting. It's nothing new or timely or anything. It's just something that came across my feed, and it's kind of 2A related. You might be able to say, hey, look, it's old and it still applies, but unfortunately, that's just because we're the victims of cycles. We're the victims of abuse. In fact, I was just doing the numbers when I don't know if anybody wants to. No one is commenting tonight live. By the way, for people that are listening as a podcast. So if anybody comments, we could look at some of those numbers. I haven't charted them yet, but the numbers are going up and down. And I started to see how the numbers, the funding numbers, the numbers of dollars that are funding the national level organizations, they go up and down with the election cycle. And I'm not surprised by that. But it's evident that they make more money the year before and the year of the election, and then they drop, and then they go up again. And what's interesting is some of them aren't just on that cycle. Some of them are on the greater cycle of Obama in 2013 and fear of Hillary in whatever that was, 18, and then this year. So interesting. So anyway, I'll keep on. Now we'll get into the gun talk. I'm going to take a moment here for all the people that are watching live because they're creepy, and I'm going to make you watch me give my dog a little bit of rub rubbing because he rolled around, and that means he wants a little bit of a scratchings. This is one of those things for when you burn ash on top of a bowl of a cup of whiskey, I think. Some kind of a burnt whiskey, or no, burnt wood shaving kit. But it kind of looks like a wooden pacifier. I should give it to him like a wooden pacifier. He's cute now, but he was farting earlier, so he's cute, but kind of stinky. All right, we'll go back to the show. We keep the little puppy down here in the corner, though, for anybody that wants to verify that the puppy co-host is here for the entire show, unless he leaves. All right, so he's sleeping right now, so he's probably not going anywhere. Here's the thing. If the other dog comes in here and jumps around, then he'll leave, because he doesn't care about us as much as he cares about her, but they're all sleeping right now. Let's see, he heard me talking about the other dog. All right, gun talk. We always start this one off with She Fires, doing her shows on Sunday, keeping a conversation going with a group of people. I think she talked about doing hers a little bit differently, so I'm curious to see how she's going to take it going forward. We got Sisters in Arms, who are Carrie Ann and Renee in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and they're doing their show on the TV at this TV station. And this is episode number 35. They've been doing a bunch of interviews lately, so they went back to a bit of a training course or a training show, I guess. Interesting for people that are watching these. Again, if back in the day when we would have conversations on the regular about stuff that was going on in the world, listening to, or just, I'm sure there's plenty of other examples of it, but there's a difference between somebody who is, let's say somebody's new to guns, and they're into guns and they want to start shooting like a cowboy gun, some kind of what they call that? Single action shooting society. So single action shooting is a single action gun like an old cowboy gun. And those folks will typically dress up like either like a cowboy or some kind of an old-timey get-up, and then that's how they shoot, like in the garb of the olden days. And most of their scenarios or most of their ranges are set up to kind of look like a saloon or some kind of barn or something. And it's not cosplay, but it's cosplay, right? So there's some people that get into guns for that. So do you think they're going to talk about CCW? No, they don't care about any of that. Do you think they care about long-range shooting or something? No, they don't care about that. Do you think they care about like the metric guns that are coming out of Europe? No, they could care less. And, I'm just going to use that as an example, but I could give you hundreds of other examples, right? There's all these different things going on. So when you know that there's a whole bunch of ladies being involved in firearms for the first time as adults, and not necessarily the way it used to be was a lady would get involved in firearms because she got married or her husband got into guns or whatever reason, she was going with her husband and they're at the range. Or maybe same thing with her friends from work or something. But it was always just like somebody tagging along because this is my friend's hobby or something. And I wouldn't say too many people stuck around, otherwise we'd have a ton of gun owners, right? So there was nothing really, it wasn't a thing to bring people with you. It just happened once in a while, and if it caught on, it caught on, but it wasn't normalized, and it wasn't normalized. Well, that's different now, and we have different situations. So now we have lots of ladies coming in and choosing to have a firearm as an individual, and then finding other ladies if that's how they're comfortable, or whatever it is else they're comfortable with. Progressing along into the whatever you want to call the journey of being a gun owner. So watching the ladies on Sisters in Arms talk about handgun fundamentals, it kind of blew my mind, because their style and their topics, I guess, or subject matter, the stuff that they included in the subject matter, the stuff that they're aware of, I mean, they don't know, but it's leaps and bounds ahead of like what would have happened when I was a kid. Like maybe if I was a kid, the only thing you would have gotten was like hunter safety or some kind of NRA safety in the home, because CCW wasn't a thing back then. So, sight alignment, for example, or just something like that. They would just say, hold your gun and do this. They didn't really tell you how to hold your gun or none of this. And over the years, there's been different fads and different techniques and different things come and go, and been proven and disproven and all this. So the accumulation of all that, or the accumulation of all that, or whatever the words are, hearing the ladies talk about their experience and bringing that to the way that they're approaching bringing that, presenting that information again, just super interesting. Now, I'm a person who's gone to a lot of CCW classes, and I appreciate the CCW classes because of their differences, the way that the instructors teach differently, and the way that, I've done my CCW classes predominantly here in Arizona, so the way that the same information is offered from different approaches and different techniques and different abilities, and then the way that students absorb it, all that is interesting to me. I don't know, for whatever reason, there's just a facet I really liked about reviewing CCW classes for years. And so now when I have an opportunity to see people try to educate others, it's just interesting. So I don't know if anybody else thinks it's worth talking that long about the show, but if you're interested, go watch Sisters in Arms episode 35, where they talk about fundamentals, essentially, some trigger pull and sight alignment and that kind of stuff. Again, it's interesting. They're essentially talking about stuff that's super technically elite, but it's also at one point, and then years later it's just common knowledge, and years later it's debatable, and then years later it's indisputable, or non-disputable. I don't know. All right, we're just about an hour in. The next thing we're talking about is Forge of Freedom, from Indiana, and this was pretty neat, talking about the Ponzi scheme, which I thought was a lot older than it is, and then the U.S. entitlement programs from the 1960s, which are Social Security and Social Security and what was the other one? Something care. It was just interesting to kind of hear the two of them juxtaposed or compared. Then we got Professor Himane, who took the week off, so we didn't have a class this week for the book, or for his course that he's been doing. I think we have 2 next week, Monday and Wednesday, so I'll miss one of them, it sounds like. But he did post a video when he was visiting the publisher of his book, and they literally show the first couple of books, I guess, going through the process. Be curious to find out if that's a place where somebody we know from the text works at. I don't think it is just from seeing pictures of both places now, but that doesn't mean I've seen everything at both places. The Guns and Gear Review podcast is on Tuesdays. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens on Tuesdays, and it's got Tony Simon, a bunch of other people on it. And what do they have this week? I think they have a guest on this week. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff happening on Tuesdays, so I'm usually listening to more than one show at a time on Tuesdays. AR keeps posting shows all the time. They did one on hand loading dummy rounds for 40 Smith & Wesson. Right on. That's probably to help transition 9mm shooters who would be scared of going to a standard caliber. So they probably have dummy rounds to help them with the transition, with their transition to a decent caliber. Night Strike did a show. He doesn't do shows very often, so I figured I'd post that in here. I actually joined him and chatting a little bit with Rogue Banshee out of Montana. Foss hosts the mouse parties. I missed this one, but each Wednesday night, overnight, no topic, just a bunch of people join in and have a conversation. One of the best things going each week, especially if you're a late nighter, like I'm assuming everybody in here is. Now, if you're listening as a podcast, you might not be an overnighter. Let's see, our friend Bullets for Bucks up in Wyoming had Epic Arms on for another live show. He does his podcast live. Interesting to watch these shows because they're way more into hunting and bolt guns for sure. But then, hunting, getting out and doing stuff and talking about the parts of the north central. Is that what you'd call Wyoming and Nebraska and all that? Foss also does a show every other weekend, and this last weekend was the one, so that means that tomorrow will not be an overnight. You'll get no overnight tomorrow. And, of course, this month being May, we had May the 4th, and we also had Revenge of the 5th. Ken Blanchard, Reverend Ken Blanchard, has been kind of redoing his things, his content online, and getting into more song and music. Not song, but playing songs, I guess. Maybe making songs. Let's see. So you might want to check that out. This is a quick one, just him saying hey for 40 seconds. But I figured it was worth putting it in there. For people that don't know, Ken wrote Black Man with a Gun in 1991 or something, and had been one of the first people I found online. I first went online and was doing fishing stuff. That was my first thing, and then a little bit of other things, just camping and stuff like that here in Arizona. And then I pretty quickly was like, oh wait, guns. Yeah, I forgot about guns because I hadn't really been into guns too much at the time. And because I'd been working at computer stuff at the time, I just wasn't into, I hadn't been spending my time on guns. I had a bunch of them or whatever. I just hadn't really been doing nothing with them. But so as soon as we got playing around with the internet, and fishing is only for certain seasons, if it's too hot or it's too cold to fish. So fishing is certain, at least down here, it gets way too hot to fish. And then hunting, even worse. They only have certain seasons, and again, you're not necessarily going to go out and scout in the middle of the heat because it has nothing to do with where the critters are going to be when it's not hot out. So you can't really scout all year for critters. So anyway, we're looking for something else to do, and we're like, oh yeah, we could be going shooting. So when I first started looking around and doing stuff online, it would have been the mid to late 90s, and Reverend Blanchard was already there. He was already doing stuff with the focus on what the Second Amendment protects, not just guns. So right from then, I was like, oh yeah, we don't have to play around here. We don't have to just take this for granted and act like this is a big game. We don't have to act like we have all the time in the world and we can just F off and screw around and let somebody else pick up the slack. But instead, we can just immediately start doing stuff of value. We can immediately start removing the distractions and the misconceptions that exist that allow the antis to take advantage of us and the people that don't know about guns. But that's really what's happening. There's a bunch of people that don't know or care about guns, and they're taken advantage of by essentially people Bloomberg pays. I keep alluding to doing the numbers. This year I included the numbers of the antis, and as much money as we make on our side, it's dwarfed by the amount of money Bloomberg pays. So we know that the antis are out there pushing things around, moving the playing field, and since the beginning, since the beginning of our fight as a community, Ken has been out there. He's ex-FBI and instructor, reverend, and now musician. But he was also a Second Amendment advocate for a long, long time, or activist for a long, long time. So I keep saying I could have been a total loser by just being a bunch of nothing on the internet. And that's probably a direction I could have gone down, because I know how to work the internet, and it's actually tougher to do gun stuff. It always has been. But I decided to do gun stuff in a big way because of what I saw Ken doing, and another reason was Goal, Gun Owners Action League out of Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. They were massive at the time. So was Georgia Carey back then. I think they changed their name now. So there's a couple of organizations that I saw were actually doing valuable, worthwhile shit online. So I consider them my, what's the word? Like the people that opened my eyes to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to. From day one, Gun Websites was focused on more than just farting around. I shouldn't say from day one. We spent like the first month or two farting around, and then as soon as I kind of looked around and went, oh wait, there's people being serious out here, we want to be part of that. So anyway, Ken's out there doing what he wants now. He's had a life that's full and with ups and downs, so he's sticking around, but he's mostly there for moral support for people that need it once in a while, like an old sensei. Then you got Rolo, still doing his thing as the Puerto Rican pistolero, I think, mixing the rants with the news, with the gun awareness, and the video game stuff constantly. So, you know, some people are like, oh yeah, I play video games and I'm into guns. And other people are like, I play video games constantly and I'm into guns. Let's see, then we got Crump. Oh, I went on this show, I think. Did I go on here? If I either went on here or was I on here? I felt like I was on there.
Simple.
No, I was on with Night Strike. Well, we were chatting in the side chat with this one. They were talking about mesh networks quite a bit. I mean, I got nothing against radios other than I don't like radios and I don't like ham radio operators. But I really, 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 really like the idea of having alternate ways to talk to people, and that, you know, across the country would be great. Across the city would be ideal. But, you know, people in your own family, in your own small group, you definitely want your own way to communicate. And why not do that on the same frequencies as like cell phones and remote controls, the 800 megahertz, the frequencies that can never be tracked and can never be, what's the word? They can never be shut down. They can never just be turned off. But any frequency that ham radio operators use is in a specific band. You know, think about a TV or a radios. If they said, you know, everybody that's using the channels that are over here, you know, the channels 7 through 12, you know, whatever, like here's a band of channels, we're just going to put noise out there. You can't use those channels anymore. And if the government wanted to do that, they could do that in a second. He would just turn on a bunch of microwaves and boom, he would just destroy all the radio traffic. You could have all the radios in the world and they wouldn't do anything. But they can't do that to the channels that are our cell phones and all the different Internet of Things, all the stuff that's little and doing the 800 megahertz stuff, the little short stuff. And that's where this mesh stuff lives. So it essentially lives in the same wavelengths as all the stuff we use every day. So there's no way to block it. There's no way to just jock it out or block it out. And it's also, because of that, it's impossible to track as well, or essentially impossible to track. And it's super long distance at very low power. So it's just smart little fast radios. Essentially the reason they put cell phones and everything at this frequency level is all the characteristics that Mesh uses. So it essentially is a cell phone with an app and a little thing that's like a box the size of a matchbox. Can you buy that for $25? You put a couple of them around. Ideally, you put one of them on a pole, and then you're talking across town for free, just anytime you want. You're texting, I guess. But that technology will change and evolve, and you need no license for it. And it costs like $25-50 to get yourself set up with a couple of people around town. And as more and more people get onto it, it'll essentially create a second internet or a second network of communication. It's neat stuff. We're sitting. It's kind of like 3D printing of, whatever comes after the old ham radios. Ham radios were invented by the guy who invented the suppressor. Just saying, they're kind of old. Anyway, this was an interesting conversation. I don't know who this guy was that he was having a conversation with, but him and Rich were talking about mesh network, so I went in there and listened for a bit. Gizzard's always talking about knives. I want to go check out one of Gizzard's knife videos.
The Concept 22, designed by Jeff Blauvelt of Tough Knives, is a fixed blade knife with a black stone-washed flat grind modified Tonto blade.
That's a mouthful, but that certainly is an interesting blade. I think I kind of like it. It's not quite a cleaver and it's not quite a Tonto, but it's kind of a sword-looking end.
Black G10 handles.
It seems kind of
thick
thick too.
With a black Kydex
but
T-clip and black paracord lanyard.
I don't know. I kind of like it. I don't know what the price point is on it. It's a Civivi. So anyway, Gizzard does a ton of videos. If you want to go check out some knife stuff, check out his channel. If you want to go buy some stuff, he's got an Amazon. Just go click on one of his videos or something. He'll have a link to his Amazon. You don't have to buy the exact things he has there. Those are suggestions. You can if you want. But just by going through his front door, you're essentially, Amazon is saying, hey, everything you buy, we're giving a little cut to Gizzard for sending it to us. So keep that in mind when you're buying stuff. People like Gizzard have Amazon shops, and they're not getting rich by it or anything, but they're certainly able to do things. They're traveling and stuff. So consider, especially if you're buying a knife or something, check out Gizzard's videos, and then click on one of them links. He's also got some specific links, or I should say direct links on his website probably, to some of the knife things out there. Are we time to talk about buying knives? I think we still are. All right, after we talk about 2A stuff and after we talk about the gun stuff, we talk about the radio shows that are out there. And there's 2, 3, 4, depending on the month or the year, or, if they're doing their shows or not, or if they're streaming their shows. There's quite a few shows that I appreciate. And the number one for a while now, for more than a few years, has been Rapid Fire Radio. This is a gun shop out of Massachusetts. One of the owners takes time every week to do a show on Sunday. I think that's an hour. Then they do a segment of a radio show, a big popular radio show out of Boston. They do a 2A Tuesday 45-minute segment of that show, and they broadcast that live on YouTube while they're doing it, or simulcast it live on YouTube, I guess, while they're doing it. And then on Wednesday, they do a 2-hour show from the gun shop, and it's a lot of fun. The host, Toby, is able to keep up on the what the people are saying in the live chat, just like I would be able to do if people were chatting out here. Like Phantom is saying Civivi has some pretty good knives for reasonable prices. They really do. I really am impressed. Every time I get a new Civivi, they send us a bunch of them to review. We appreciate it. I'm always impressed. I think they have ceramic bearings. I think that's what it's all about. They're super smooth. I really like their designs too. They're kind of simplistic with like flair without being gaudy. I don't know if that's the right word, but like some knives are made for people that have different tastes than me. Civivi's a lot more subtle. I really like the Civivi shapes and design features, or maybe the lack of design features, because they keep them so simple. All right, so Rapid Fire Radio on Wednesdays, 2A Tuesdays on Tuesday, and I don't know what they call their Sunday show, but yeah, it's really cool to hang out with Toby, and they're getting well down in Massachusetts, so quite a bit of the topics from callers and just topics from the show recently have been because of the Massachusetts issues. But Toby's been a gun shop owner for a long time, a gun owner for even longer. So he'll keep up on just general gun questions and stuff too. I just noticed he's using a really shitty light. We need to get Toby a way better light for his setup there. I have like 100 at this point, like 100 ring lights. I'm gonna send him a couple of ring lights, I think. Let's see. So then we have, okay, those other radio shows that we listen to, but this I'm putting in here because it's about radio, kind of. This is S2 radio, it's S2 Underground, really awesome channel. They do a daily sit rep, a daily report that's, well, I'm not going to say it's unbiased, but it's as neutral as you can get, and it's typically more wide spectrum than just whatever dumb focus the news of the day has on the big 3-letter orgs or whatever they're called, 3-letter news cycles. This week, though, they had an amazing insight, I guess to say, at the end of the show.
Though Americans at large cannot do anything.
So I'm going to adjust the volume, and we're going to get copyrighted. Hopefully he doesn't care. But we're going to play this louder, and I'm going to refresh it. So this is way at the end, like way at the end of a really long show. And this is just sums up things very nicely. Hey, puppy, wake up. You got to wake up so that you don't snore through the whole thing. You awake now? Bad dog. Bad dog. Be pushing a bad co-host. Wake up. There he goes. Now he won't snore through the whole thing. Yeah, well, quit being a bad co-host.
Such, though Americans at large cannot do anything but take note of the situation, congressional actions such as these provide excellent motivation for the average American to not sink into anger and despair, but to strive for excellence, adopting a spirit of magnanimity, and understanding that in our time and age, we have been given challenges that only we can overcome. We cannot choose the challenges we are given, but we can decide what we do with the time that is granted to us. As time is short throughout our grand human experience, a better use of that time is not to lament, but rather to rejoice that the problems of the world fall upon us to solve. This concludes such, though Americans at large cannot do anything but take note of the situation.
Okay, so he's essentially saying, you know, we get our chains yanked constantly by the media and the fear core people that just feed on that shit. They go and they look for it. The search engines, you know, give it to them. They feed them it because that's what they want, and it's a feedback loop of worry and complaining and misery. So he's saying, you know, what are we? He's lamenting on that and saying, what are we? What are our options when it seems like, you know, what we're fed is garbage?
Such, though Americans at large cannot do anything but take note of the situation, congressional actions such as these provide excellent motivation for the average American to not sink into anger and despair, but to strive for excellence, adopting a spirit of magnanimity, and understanding that in our time and age, we have been given challenges that only we can overcome. We cannot choose the challenges we are given, but we can decide what we do with the time that is granted to us. As time is short throughout our grand human experience, a better use of that time is not to lament, but rather to rejoice that the problems of the world fall upon us to solve. This could such.
And then he pretty much ends the show at that point. It's epic. I'm going to throw the link in here for anybody that wants to use that and share it around, because excellent perspective, excellent summary of the options that are truly ahead of us. All right. So I thought that was epic. Then we have another radio show that I listen to as often as possible, Gun Owners Radio. They pretty much go live right in the middle of she fires, so you have to listen to both. So you have to listen to both if you're going to try to listen to them. But they've been doing more and more paying attention to what gets said in the chat, and there's a bigger and bigger group of people that hang out while it's happening. So, we're not over. Like we have cycles, and the community of live gun, community of live 2A. We have huge entities now that we never had before, and I'm sure that takes a lot of people just go fill up their 2A cups at the huge resources out there. But the people who like to get together on the regular and have actual conversations with each other, and not just be part of an audience at a stadium event. Those things are still happening, and Gun Owners Radio is one of them. So that being said, they have a gun show coming up in June 1st, I think. So if you're going to be in the San Diego area, they're going to have a real gun show at a different location than the last one. So there'll be more actual guns for sale. I guess technically there were no guns for sale at the last one. I don't know if that was the venue or the part of town or something, but some reason they could only bring guns to show people and then invite you back to their shop to actually do any kind of transaction. But it sounds like that wasn't a California issue, or if it was, it's over, because they said this time there's actually guns at the show that are actually available for purchase, which is like more traditionally what a gun show is all about. And for people that are listening to this because they've never listened to a show like this before, what we're talking about is a gun show in California that has kind of been on or off again due to persecution by anti-rights folks who think that gun shows are somehow the enemy. And gun shops have the same legal obligation if they're selling a gun at their store or if they're selling a gun from the gun shop. And that's the only two places they can sell from. They can't go door to door. They can't just sell something in on a we call it like a little pop-up tent on the side of the road. They can legally do business from their brick and mortar, from wherever it is they have their license attached, and then they're allowed to go to a gun show per the 1986 Gun Owners Protection Act, or maybe 1968, I forget. But there was some time when they amended the federal firearms licenses to allow gun shops to go to gun shows, and that's why gun shows are targeted specifically, because they allow gun shops to extend their reach. They allow gun shops to come together and for a free market to happen, some sort of a temporary pop-up event like a show, like a swap meet or something. A gun show will happen and a bunch of vendors come together and people figure out the different prices, and the different people have the opportunity to shop, and the gun shops all have the opportunity to see audiences that are customer bases that are now what's the word, like moderating the extremes, and you have a better economy that way. You have a more realistic, like stable economy, in my opinion. So yeah, they don't like that. The antis know that. Plus, the gun shows allow people who are gun owners to talk to each other. They allow us to congregate and have social interaction, and they do not want that. So they have to demonize the show, and they do that by creating ignorance and then exploiting the misunderstandings. All right, so that's why the Gun Owners Radio gun shows are so cool. It cost me $500 to get my ass over there. I asked my one friend, he's sick right now, so he never gave me an answer, but the guy friend of mine who started all this with me actually a long time ago, in the late 90s, went with me last time, and I don't know, it'll be hotter, so it's not as easy to bring the dogs this time. But so it might cost even more if I could put the dogs up. But it's not a given for me to be able to go. If we had twice as many Patreons jump in somehow between now and then, I'd love to go. But yeah, I don't think I'm traveling this year. But I have been invited to go, and I certainly would like to go. So if you are able to get to San Diego, I think it's June 1st, definitely check it out. It's neat to see a gun show, period. A gun show in California is a treat, but a gun show in California that exists despite the political pressure for it to be distinguished or extinguished is the best of all worlds. Well, it's not the best of all worlds, but it's certainly, a sweet gun show. All right, so a couple weeks ago I did the hypothetical, if I could travel to all the events in the country, how much would it cost? How many miles would it be? How long would it take? I mean, obviously it would take the whole year, but how much time off would you have from driving? And that means how much time would you have to find somewhere to live, between the different events. It'd be awesome if an event was 3 days and then you had 3 days to travel and you just, always had, barely had to pop up a tent or something to stay places. But a lot of times things are 6 weeks away from each other, or 2 weeks between events, or 200 miles between events instead of 2,000 miles. So there's just no driving time. So now you have to find something to do, and depending on what part of the country it's in. So it becomes pretty quick, not feasible to do every event in the country, even if you were independently wealthy and retired like Gizzard. But it's just too difficult. Like, there's just too much stuff to do, and there's like, again, too many lags and too much stuff that happens so quickly. But it would certainly be interesting to get to a couple of events this year. NRA show is happening next weekend, and we have an unprecedented situation where Wayne's gone, a couple of his closest supporters also gone, people that were like the most corrupt, other ways to say, like, the most corrupt people are gone. The people that are even close to that have barely held on, and the people who were called reform candidates for the board all got elected with record numbers. We have Amanda Suffolcool and we have Rick Ector, who are already board members. And there's probably other board members that I just don't know off the top of my head because I'm not that interested. But I'm listing off board members that are pro-reform. So we have a bunch of people that like to just do nothing. So they'll justify doing nothing by saying nothing can be done. Okay, so I'm going to disregard all them because they wouldn't have done shit. Even if you gave them all the tools and resources and put it right in front of them, they're not going to do it. But there's a bunch of people that are doing stuff, and they understand the NRA is a membership organization, and they've literally put their fucking money where their mouth is. They've ran for office and become elected, or already have been elected, or are the members that are interested in seeing something change. And those people are going to be at NRA show this year. I'd like to go to NRA show and see that element of it, right? I'd like to be at least one camera pointed at that. I fucking hope there's going to be cameras pointed at that element of NRA show. I don't know how many people were around in 2019 when we had an opportunity as individual members or as individuals with an interest in seeing the NRA change. There was an opportunity to do something about it, and all I can tell you is there was like 4 people in that room who gave a shit and tried. And as 4 people, they weren't able to do anything. But again, the people that aren't going to do shit anyway will have said there was no point in going in that room. But again, there's going to be a bunch of people that go to NRA show and don't even fucking consider going into the room to see what it's all about. It's an NRA annual meeting and events. NRA annual meeting is the members having a meeting. And that's the part I'm talking about being actually the only important thing that's fucking happening in 2A, some people could say, in years, but other people are going to ignore it like it's not even an entity, like it's a non-issue. And some people will go and ignore that to the point where, they won't even acknowledge that I'm even bringing it up as an issue. Okay. I was just checking to see if something I sent got a reply or not. So let me close out of there so it's not super distracting. It's not a very bad thing to just go check your email in the middle of a show, in the middle of a sentence, right? So let's see. So then I guess I was ranting about getting over to Gun Owners Radio's gun show, and then how expensive that'll be. I guess I don't even think about how much it's going to cost to get over to Dallas, but definitely money to get to Dallas. So as much as I'd like to go this year to follow up what's going on, not happening unless, again, maybe 5 times the amount of Patreons jumped on board. So if you're listening to this, you really want to see somebody interested in neutral and with authentic investigative interest in going to NRA, then get on board. Or if you're a gun shop or somebody who wants to throw a couple grand at me, let's make this happen. But I can't keep going to these events and losing money. Like, I'm So, spent a lot of time and money getting out of that hole. But hopefully somebody will be at NRA with the focus on that stuff besides the 3 or 4 reform candidates themselves. Because unfortunately none of them carry around a camera and do what we would like to see, the actual open up an eye there. I'm going to go over to gun calendars where, again, our Patreons make it possible for us to post stuff like this where we post a calendar. Guess what? A whole bunch of different calendars, actually, that don't have a bunch of ads anywhere. We'll take a look. There we go. Here's today, the 10th. So we've got the rest of this weekend, Mother's Day this weekend. Hopefully everybody has something positive they can do with that. On the 12th, which is also Mother's Day, we've got the anniversary of a law in 1999 being shot down in the Senate. That would a Democratic proposal that would have required background checks for firearms at gun shows. So that law got shot down in 1999, 4 or 5 years after the stupid assault weapons ban, which they could already see was not working. So there was by no means like a sway. They just happened to get the assault weapons ban through, but immediately got negative feedback from it. They immediately got consequences from it. And they weren't able to pass anything else up until 2013 of any significance. Let's see. Then we have the anniversary. They changed my stuff around. It used to be a lot easier to read these things as they popped up. But we have the anniversary of the passing of the guy who invented the Makarov. His name is Makarov. So he's frustrating to keep track of because he was both born in May and passed away in May. So he was born in 1914, and he passed away in 1988. So that's an interesting span to be alive. And he invented the Makarov, which a lot of people will say is a super, super cool pistol. I don't know how many Makarovs you own. I think I've owned 3. But we have 1 now. I don't know who has it, but me and a friend pass it back and forth. I think we spend $300 on it. So whenever one of us needs $300, we sell it to the other guy, and then vice versa. I think we're both flush now, so I don't even know. I probably have it because of pictures, but he might have it because he likes it. It was his gun originally, I think. I don't know how many people do that, but for us, Makarov, for me, I have a couple of those like that, but for us, that Makarov is a fun one to pass back and forth because it's almost like you're getting another, I got another gun. It's the same gun you've had before, but you get to play with it again. And then when you get rid of it, you're like, and then you kind of long for it again, and then eventually you're hoping he needs $300 so that you get it back again. Let's see. So then you got the Miller case, the anniversary of the Miller case in 1939. It's a pretty shitty one. But it's a confusing one too, so I'm not going to get into it this late in the show. But again, if we used to have, think about if you're like, what should I do? I want to be part of all this thing. I want to see the ball move forward. I want to end the confusion, and I want to normalize guns. All valuable things. And if you've got the time or the inclination to put into that, host a show where you talk about some of the stuff that is off the news of the day focus, because that's how we get distracted. They put a bouncing ball out there so we never master anything. We never understand and we never see the cycles, but they just keep putting that fucking ball out there, and then the next thing you know, it's season 2 of bouncing the fucking ball around. And then it's season 3 of bouncing the fucking ball around. Before you know it, they change the rules a little bit, and they change the rules a little bit, and everybody's fucking wearing uniforms, and they're playing this game literally by some fucking rules when it shouldn't even be a game. We should not even be fucking caring about this bouncing ball, right? All right, so then we got the NRA meetings coming up. That happens on the same day that Russia sold 100,000 AKs to Venezuela. I used to post that. That happened in 2005, and I started this stuff, a long time ago. Let's see, Ask Gun Questions started in 2007, so I think we went and looked and seen when I bought gun calendars. I don't think I bought gun calendars that early, but I've been I bought gun calendars eventually because I had so many events out there listed in all of our different databases and stuff. So I eventually just wanted a calendar one. But this one I always thought was frustrating because I can remember in 2005, I was just talking about the assault weapons ban ended in September of 2004. So guess what we all wanted to buy? AKs. I only owned 2 at the time. No, 3. So when the assault weapons ban ended, I wanted more, right? And there was a lot of Romanian kits. So we could get Romanian parts kits and put them together on inexpensive receivers and have as many AKs as we wanted. And that's what we had to do to some extent because fucking Russia sold 100,000 AKs to Venezuela. And what that did is kind of screw up everything coming from Sega and well, there was nothing coming from Pepper back then, but some Sega. So it really screwed with the concept of getting a Sega. And that meant for years no one got a Sega. Right at the time the assault weapons ban was happening. And I'm sure the Russians thought that was funny as shit. But, you know, the company themselves probably didn't dig it, but the rest of the country thought it was funny. And I'm sure the antis thought it was hilarious because that was there was a bunch of commies selling a bunch of guns to Venezuela. And nobody thought not twice about it. Venezuela, big deal. They got all the money in the world. Do I have to tell you what happened with Venezuela years later? So I put this kind of stuff in the calendar, and we talk about this kind of stuff because it's not what they're going to talk about in News of the Day, but it is going to happen on Friday, Friday, May 17th. Where the hell did I get September from? Anyhow, then we got the NRA meetings. I think it's Saturday, so Monday, or let's see, Friday, everybody will show up and they have some kind of evening event. And then Saturday during the day is when the actual meetings are happening, and that's when 0 people will be covering the actual meetings, and they'll all be out in the meeting halls acting like it's SHOT Show. Let's see, then on the 19th, we have the anniversary of the Firearms Owners Protection Act, probably one of the most misunderstood situations we've got out there. And why? Because people want to sum it all down to a fucking YouTube short. They want you to watch the next video. They don't give a shit if you understand or if you have a grasp. They just want to wow you with some bullshit little headline. So, of course, we had the Hughes Amendment added to this, and that's heinous, obviously. But every other piece about this was good for us. This was going to get lost because it happens on the same day as the NRA show, but that would be, again, an awesome topic for people to sit around and have a real conversation about. And then we also have the Law Enforcement Officers Protection Act, the LEOSA. People hate cops, whatever. Some people like cops, but this was Black Talons, essentially. Remember Black Talons? Then in May 21st, we have the anniversary of the Cincinnati Revolt. So in 1977, Neil Knox, who was at the time, was he the vice president of the NRA? The NRA decided in 1977, we're going to Colorado. We're not going to be in Washington, D.C. no more. We don't need to do politics. And what was happening in 1977? It was less than 10 years after the 1968 Gun Control Act. You think they were done with the 1968 Gun Control Act? They were like, oh, no problem. We've had enough gun control. We're finished. No, hardly. We had the 1986 we just talked about because the 1968 was like fucking giving jackboots free reign to jackboot on people. So they started wailing on individuals and never going after criminals, doing all the stuff we expect them, we hear that they're going to do Well, they were doing that shit in 1968 immediately, from what I understand. I wasn't born yet. So in 1977, they had 9 years of this fucking bullshit. So Neil Knox, before any kind of internet, this is way before any kind of internet was even dreamed about. Well, it was maybe being dreamed about. But this was way before any kind of communications ability that we have today. So instead, he had a little robot phone that you would hook up to your phone, and it would call people. And he had, did he have fax? I don't think there was fax machines yet. You had that robot call, and he had newsletters. I talked to Jeff about this, and he told me. But basically, it was happening. You can read about a couple of these kind of elements of it are in the book, his book. But very crude compared to today ability to communicate with the NRA members. Yet he was able to get enough NRA members to go to the meeting and decide to put on the same color hat, I think an orange hat, at noon or whatever it was, like 2 p.m. They all decided to put on an orange hat, and that showed enough solidarity with the members that the board decided to create the ILA. And they stayed in Washington, D.C., and they became a political entity. So anybody that wants to suggest any other bullshit, unless they can cite some of the history of the NRA, they're just fucking regurgitating bullshit crap that was given to them. So we had a massive change in the NRA based on membership, and that was based on an individual and a couple of people, him and Harlan, I guess, but a couple of people who were dedicated to changing something. So anybody that tells you it's not worth your time, or or if you're hesitating because is there value in it? Fuck yeah, there's value in it. Some guy did it with a fax machine, or less than a fax machine, and a freaking newsletter that he probably had to use like a Xerox machine or something to put together at great cost back in the day. So we have the internet now, and we have the ability to add to the conversation. We don't have to have the answers. We can add to the conversation, which creates the answers. We've seen it happen over and over and over the years. Next thing is the Fraser Historical Arms Museum opened up in Kentucky. I have not been there, but I like museums, so I put that in there. And like I said, Makarov, he's both passes away and dies. No, he both passes away and is born in the same month and within days of each other. So he passed away in 1988, and then a week later, he's born in 1914. Except, the other thing, the reason I'm saying so much of this is, one, I'm going to be posting this like with a lag. So when I'm saying this, you're probably hearing, the end of this calendar here. But May 24th and 25th and 26th is Train and Learn. And I think this is year 5. Oh, man, I don't know, because of the bullshit that year. If this is year 4 or 5, technically 4 or 5, you know what I mean, of Train and Learn, which is KD bringing people together very inexpensively. Like, this is actually letting people come together and not requiring them to be independently wealthy. Bringing people together who are both instructors and content creators so that they can, dip each other's peanut butter into each other's chocolate. They can all bring stuff to the table and learn from each other. So they're both going to be training and learning. It's a great concept, and it's something that's been going on now for, like I say, 4 or 5 years. Great, lots and lots of success coming out of it, as well as they're not shying away from there's been issues. So it's not fake bullshit like, it's all been all perfect. And it's definitely not, it's like $300. It's the most economical thing you can do to improve your situation in the community, or is your channel, or both, because it's really both. Great opportunity. One of my favorite things to see each year. And it's always getting better too. It's not like hobbling along. It's like on a steady growth trend. I'll leave it with John Wayne being born on the 26th. So if you're listening to this in the future, John Wayne's anniversary of John Wayne being born is on the 26th, and then Memorial Day will be on the 27th. All right, so with that, we'll jump out of gun calendars. But again, thanks to our Patreons who make it possible for me to have, run the thing. I mean, that it exists is up to them, because like I say, the servers wouldn't be there and it wouldn't exist if they weren't there. But really, it's the time it takes to set that thing up. Well, maybe every 3 years I have to thrash through and do the whole thing over again. The internet just changes too much and stuff gets old, and I don't pay for that. I think I might pay for that software now, but for a long time I didn't pay for that software. And that meant every 3 years I probably had to go through and just redo it. So even when I do pay for it, that'll only last a few years. Like, something will happen to that software, and something will happen to the internet, and I'll have to either upgrade it or it'll go away and I'll have to get something new. And I'll have to redo that whole calendar page site again. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you're only looking at it, but when you think about how much data is in there, that's a massive week-long, probably more than that, undertaking if I tried to do it all at once. Instead, I do it maybe 3 days at a time here and there, just over throughout the months. And again, that's thanks to the Patreons for letting us be able to do that. All right, we were playing the kind of excerpt at the end of the wire there. I'll close that now. We'll get to the military interviews. I listen to quite a few military shows each week. I want to say 1,000 times better than listening to people gripe about grip angles and red dot shit. Yeah, I'd say 1,000 times better for me. I'm learning so much more from the different interviews, and sometimes it'll be something I want to listen to. A guy from Nam who's a Green Beret. Like, I totally care about that. That's what I grew up with. I want to hear their stories because, it was hard to get those stories back in the day from them. And then some of the interesting new stuff, like this one we're going to talk about, super interesting to listen to. But I always hear something crazy, and I don't want to say always, but I think I can comfortably say always find some interesting insight from some of the ones that I think I'm not going to enjoy. Just somebody who the description or the title sounds like, I'm not going to enjoy this one, and then boom, I'm totally surprised. So I'm almost not surprised anymore. Like, I really look forward to these shows. So Team House comes out Friday nights, right before Gizzard, and it's a couple hours, and it's live. This week, of course, it's not, the contrary, but whatever. Most of the time, it's live. People will show up with the guys in New York and have the 2 hour or more conversation. But additionally, they'll have other shows throughout the week. So sometimes they'll have one on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and then they do another show that's some CIA analysts whenever there's something going on in the news, usually. And that has literally been the most useful insight out there, because the news is trying to give you an agenda-based version of what's happening, and then the fear core, people that can't get enough fear, that's all they care about, is the fear part of it. So listening to people who actually have been involved in policy, international policy, give you rational insight, lets you bypass 90% of the dire sky is falling bullshit that's out there. So I really appreciate that's called, okay, I can't remember the name of the show, but it's the other show that's on the Team House channel. Then we have Toby, Cape Gunworks. I mentioned he's on a couple of different shows. I guess I put him in the wrong section here. He's supposed to be up on the radio show part. This is the other one. Eyes On. That's the name of the other show. So this week they were talking about Israel and Hamas. What do you know? Let's see. Then we have Combat. No, this is Mike Drop. So Mike Drop is the SEAL guy who's the dog handler, and he also does his show in studio, but not live. So it's edited. He'll bring people to his place in Dallas, though. So anybody that's going to Dallas and doesn't hang out with Mike Drop somehow, I'm just saying, choke yourself, right? So Mike Drop is pretty good. Totally different vibe or whatever to the show, and I think a super cool format. He'll ask people their morning routines and some kind of crazy questions to kind of get it all started, and then really good insight. He's just a great interviewer, like really good insightful questions at the right time, and then you'll shut up and sit there and let the person talk. Pretty neat. Anyway, this guy was a guy from Blackwater. So this guy was Air Force security. So it's basically Air Force guard, and then Blackwater, and then Army. Was he Army Air? So this guy had an interesting career, and he was an officer and stuff. And he's just a weird guy. Listening to the interview, super interesting, I guess, but weird dude. Let's see. Then we have the guy from Blue Green here in Arizona. This is this hippie farm that's up by where Allen Anchor is. And last time they talked about chickens. This time they talked about ducks. So if you ever thought about self-sufficiency or growing your own food or having your property create income, then of course you might think of chickens. That's poultry. Well, ducks aren't poultry. Ducks are waterfowl, so they're not regulated or licensed the same, and they're different because they're not poultry. They're ducks, so they are different. They have different growing requirements and different results, I guess, whatever I'm going to say. Like, you get different quantities of stuff from them. Anyway, another half an hour. conversation about that one. I'm throwing it in there because I really enjoy them. Then the Green Beret Foundation had a pretty interesting short kind of tribute to Fran Wessling, who is one of the moms who's a part of what the Green Beret Foundation does. And this is a great video to summarize. It's long, so I won't play the whole thing this late in the show. But it's a great video to summarize what the Green Beret Foundation does. So there's the military, right? And then there's the branches of the military, and then there's the, whatever else. However you want to divide up the military and all the different things that get done by all the different people that are doing it. And everybody has their own issues because they all have their own experiences. Well, there's a VA, a Veterans Administration, and they're capable to some extent, but they're not magic and they're government. So they could care less half the time, and they're not able half the time, and they're just run by bureaucracy. So it's essentially half criminal. It gets some things done, but it's by no means perfect, and it probably shouldn't try to be perfect. So as an enhancement or alternative or a supplement to what the VA could ever do or would do, most entities, branches, units, areas of interest or whatever, ways that people have found that they are in. When people find that they're in need and they're not alone, organizations are created. And Fran Wessling started an organization, and it became part of the Green Beret Foundation's overall efforts. And it's a great illustration of the situation that we have with the 20-something year global war on terror. And again, just the dynamic of the way the world is. Do we want a country that we have to pay so much in taxes that the VA is all powerful? Some people might say so, but I don't think I'd want that either. So I'm not saying the VA is perfect or we should be satisfied, but at the same time, we are allowed to do things beyond what the VA does. And it's hopefully more than inspiring, but also useful to see some success stories and some projects that are happening out there. And this is a great summary of better than I did here of describing that. And this is the end. Nobody said anything, so I won't spend too much time, but I did a video and went through some of it here. But in 2022, I went through, after discovering that there's a website that'll tell you about all the different, any nonprofit's money, like their tax records for any nonprofit, and you can search that huge database of, got to be tens of thousands of nonprofits in the country, if not more than that. And you can search for things, and I would search for gun, and I would search for firearm, and I'd search for rifle and stuff like that, and discover the tax records for, a bunch of different organizations. All right, we're playing a commercial. I try to get rid of these hiccups. Driving me nuts.
Sir, why are you in Barry's fishing net? He ran right into it. Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty apes! First off, that is incredibly rude. You ran straight into Barry's fishing net. It's ruined. How is Barry gonna fish now? I'm just trying to find some patches and some stickers. Well, all you have to do is go to gearwebsites.com and you can find 2A-related stickers and patches. And even if you need web consulting, technology consulting, 3D printing, anything like that, gearwebsites.com. Now, please get out of the net. I'm sorry, jerk.
Uh-oh, somebody's stretching. Oh, you missed it. I never get him stretching. Does anybody see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes yet? I kind of like it. I haven't liked the newest ones because I don't like having to read every time the monkeys are making noises at each other. It's horrible. So I didn't like some of them. But the monkeys all just talk to each other now. Oh, the apes, excuse me. The apes. Look at how he's looking at me because I said monkeys. Is he sneezing? I thought he was sneezing. He's kind of gonna sneeze, maybe. Anyway, the new Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of Planet of the Apes, pretty good. It's not all that good, but it's pretty good. All right, he fell back to sleep. He's going to sleep. But went over and took a look at how much the organizations are making. Now I'm yawning. How much the organizations are making in the last couple of years. I think I was saying that I started this in 2022, and the records were only available a couple of years behind. So, like with a lag, only available up to 2020. So I went in there in 2024 the other day and updated it up to 2022. And as you can expect, most of the organizations grew, some of them significantly, and then tapered off, or some of them dropped. So a temporary or transient interest, and of course, based on probably a reaction. I'm assuming a reaction to threat, right? A reaction to perception of fear, or perception of fear not being able to own the things. I suspect just the perception of fear this time around, and that's doesn't help us. It's okay, it's nice, it's good to have some extra gun owners, but not if they're only here for 15 minutes and then they drop their guns at the nearest gun buyback and say, well, I'm a gun owner, but I hate guns. So it'd be a lot better if we had a swell in gun ownership, because people saw that guns are normalized and people felt comfortable with their experience with firearms enough to buy their own firearms and then have kids that they buy firearms for. Like, that's our goal, right? Just get back to normal. Anyhow, so, and well, I'll keep harping on it. We have a couple of organizations that come out of the woodwork for election seasons, make millions of freaking dollars, and then go back to sleep. And we fight in those states as if we're alone. We fight in those states, and people go, how come the national level organizations don't show up? Because an entity that's bigger than them, and they're fighting the whole country's battles, an entity that's larger than their whole national level organization is sitting in that state. What are they doing? Like, what? Nobody's saying shit. And we're all like, oh, you should help us get to everybody should be paying attention to what's going on in that state. You don't just get black eyes from the other side. We got to get our shit together over here. Let's see. Then we got me and Tony did a show. Kind of caught back up again on the 5th. Revenge of the 5th, I think, or was it May the 4th? It was one of the 2 Star Wars days. But me and Tony haven't chatted forever, so we mostly just bullshit in there. This week he'll probably be getting ready for. I think we're still chatting this week because he doesn't have train and learn for a couple of weeks still. So I think we'll be able to get back to some questions this week. That being said, I'm still churning away doing some other stuff, so I'm not spending as much time as I'd like on all this, especially going into something like the NRA show. If I was running on full cylinders right now, or all cylinders, I'd be traveling to NRA, and I'd be focused on the fact that we have three or four board members that ran in opposition to the status quo that are called reform members, and they were voted in record votes. In other words, the top 5 something votes that came in were for those reform candidates. Wayne's gone. We have Amanda Suffolcool was voted in already. She's essentially a reform candidate. And then Rick Ector has been voted in as an adjunct or intern, and then solidified as an actual voted in member. And when I talked about Ken Blanchard, I mean, Rick Ector and Ken had both been doing this longer than I have. Literally since before the 90s, well, in the 90s, they were doing this shit. So we have massive potential. There's no Wayne, no what's-her-face, Marion is gone. A couple of other people, I don't know their names, I suspect are gone or else leaving. And very few people, there is no more like the way they used to do it, because those people are gone. So all we're going to see at the NRA is I don't know what we're going to see, but I don't think we're going to see any of it, because all the people I mentioned don't know how to bring a camera and go live. So they're not comfortable with it. They don't know how to do it. They've never practiced it. And the people that are going that know how to do that shit aren't getting paid to do it. So they're not going to go in that room and find it for us. Anyway, it's, I guess I was saying that, if I was able to, that's where I'd be. But whatever, maybe next year. We are going to be able to get some Every Second Matters stuff going before elections, ideally. But this
This is Earl Benson, reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Foul Territory, Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.